Good morning and welcome to PW Only IAS English. In the daily news analysis for 18th of March 2025, we are going to see these articles. This article is very important. A status check of universal health coverage in India. Is this Ayushman Bharat kind of a program which gives a lot of incentive or lot of capital money dole out to the private sector hospitals? Is it suitable for a country like India? We have seen programs like Obamacare, but that was for a developed country like the US, where out of pocket expenditure in a country like India is around 70%. Is this a good move to invest so much on the insurance without having the basic, the bunyadi facilities like the primary healthcare centers in place? Now, talking about the US itself, US positive in terms of trade discussions. We are signing a new trade pact with the US, the discussions for which are going on. So, this topic will be another topic for the day. Rest of the topics are this. Now, nearly 75% government assurances made by the union ministers in the parliament were not fulfilled. What is the portal on which we track these government assurances? We are going to discuss about this also. This is a matter of parliamentary accountability. Talking of the parliamentary accountability, why CAG appointment should be the sole prerogative of the government. President appoints the CAG, the Comptroller and Auditor General, who audits the books of accounts of the union, the state, and these days even the Panchayati Raj bodies, thanks to the centrally sponsored schemes. Why he should be appointed only by the central government? Why not the CAG should be appointed by a committee, select committee comprising of leader of opposition, prime minister, and even the judicial member, the CJI? This is the crux of the PIL. Then editorial, a status check on the universal health coverage. As I said, India's goods trade deficit at 42 months low. What are the reasons behind it? And then the editorial on US and Yemen. So let's get started. Guys, even as we are talking about the accountability of Central Information Commission, why the members of Central Information Commission should be appointed solely by the government. Now, talking about another serious matter of accountability, holding the government to account, CAG, the member, the body, the constitutional body whose mandate is to audit the books of accounts of the central government and the state government and present the report before the parliament. When this institution's head is appointed only by the executive, can we ensure the impartiality? Can we say that with 100% confidence that CAG would not be a loyalist of the government? So that is the question here. The petition, the PIL, has been filed in the court asking that the CAG must be appointed by the president in consultation with the non-partition selection committee comprising of the prime minister, the leader of opposition, and the chief justice of India. In the past, we have seen such reforms for Central Information Commission, Central Election Commission, pardon me, but those reforms have been rendered ineffective thanks to the passage of the bill by the parliament, by the government, which says that CEC will be appointed by a committee comprising of the PM, the leader of opposition, and one cabinet minister, thereby giving again the majority to the government. That is, the prime minister and the cabinet minister will be there. So government will have a complete sway over the appointment of the election commission members. So as the country is progressing, as the citizenry is becoming more and more active, and as more and more of you prepare for civil services exam and read the newspaper, so that puts the pressure on the government, on the agencies, on the judiciary to bring about such reforms which are required for development, which are required for administrative transparency. So that is why we are talking about another important information institution, CAG. Here the reform of CAG is required. In the past also, when the 2G scam came to light, when the Colgate scam came to light in the previous regime, in the 2000 pre 2014 era, then also there was a demand to make CAG a multi-member body because there were allegations of bias against CAG. We are not saying that CAG is biased or CAG is pro-government. All that we are saying is government should ensure that this transparency agenda, the accountability should not only be done, accountability should not only be there, but it should also be perceived. Perception of administrative transparency and lack of corruption should be given equal importance when it comes to the appointment procedure of such members. You talk about CBC, you talk about CAG now, you talk about the members of Chief Election, Central Election Commission. All these bodies are being one by one reformed. So this is a good thing insofar as GS Mains Paper 2 accountability of the executive is concerned, this topic is concerned. So you can write this as another pointer in your notes for GS Mains Paper 2. Moving further, trade discussions with the US positive, says the Commerce Secretary of India. He says that we are proactively engaging with the US. Now, Commerce Secretary said that US and India are proactively engaged in boosting trade between the two countries. So this is just a thing. Now, talking about what are the targets, what is the framework, Mission 500. We want to increase the trade between the two countries, India and US, from $200 billion to $500 billion amidst the trade war, the tariff war that is going on. When asked specifically about what are going to be the norms for the taxes for Tesla and electric vehicles, okay, so he said that he declined to comment on the tariffs for premium US electric cars. He did not even comment on the status of the revised import policy designed to attract Tesla into country. India has been vying, India has been trying its best to attract Tesla to make investment into India. Donald Trump, the other day, I think it's been like 2 weeks, the Donald Trump said that moving Tesla manufacturing plant to India just because India is giving zero tariffs or lower tariffs, this is unfair to the United States of America. So US is putting pressure on India to not to attract manufacturing into India by giving the lollipop of lower taxes. Okay, so this is the kind of toffee being offered to Elon Musk, that you come to India, then we will charge you lesser taxes. US is against this way of attracting FDI from US into India. He says that India should lower the tariffs across the board in order to have friendly relations with the United States of America. Even as the two countries are talking about the new trade agreement by multi-sectoral bilateral trade agreement. Okay, the discussions are going on. Nonetheless, US is fighting a kind of tough battle with India, and India is under utmost pressure at this time, ever since the Donald Trump has come to power, to reduce the taxes on customs duties on the goods that are imported into India from the United States of America. So this is there. The scheme to promote manufacturing of electric passenger cars has been brought about by the government of India. It offers 15% customs duty to manufacturers that set up production plant in India. So gradually we want to increase the manufacturing base. So what we are doing is, in the areas like Chennai, Kerala, or you can talk about Bengaluru, we want to attract these companies of US or China, and we are saying that even if you start assembling these cars in India, just the assembly line, gradually you can start producing these cars, manufacturing these cars 100% in India. But even if you just start assembling them in India, we will charge 15% customs duty on the spare parts that you will import into India. So US concerns are that this would be unfair to the United States. Remember, in the previous term of Donald Trump, 2017, when he was elected the president for the first time, he had strictly warned China against such moves of attracting FDI, moving FDI from attracting FDI from US into China. China had insisted on companies like Apple way back in 2017-16 that if Apple moves the manufacturing, including the patents, into China from USA, then China will give concessional treatment to these companies in terms of taxation, long term capital gains tax, etc. That led to a kind of trade war between China and the United States. Here in India, we are playing the same game. Let's see how it pans out in the future. Now, US has, however, agreed to work towards an early trade deal with India. Right. The US president also called out India's high car duties during Prime Minister Modi's visit. So this is just a developing story. We'll keep you updated about it as and when it pans out. Any other element is added to it, we will cover that again. Now, coming to another interesting question of the parliamentary accountability, relevant for parliamentary accountability of the executive, is the government assurances. Nearly 75% of the assurances made by the union ministers in the parliament are not fulfilled. We are talking about year 2024 alone. Okay, so what are government assurances? If any minister stands on the floor of Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha and assures about taking the step or assures about coming back with the answer to the question asked during question hour, that is called as government assurance. If these assurances are not lived up to, then that leads to a kind of pendency, as we are talking about 75% of such assurances made by the union ministers in the parliament. So what happens is, ministers usually, they you often must have seen that whenever the parliamentary session is over, minister of DOPT, minister of pensions public grievances, Mr. Jitendra Singh, he is seen in the precincts of the corridor of the Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha, and he is seen talking to the media persons. And it is at that time the ministers, they give the assurances. Anything said outside the floor of the house is not binding on the government, but anything that is said inside the parliament, inside the Lok Sabha, on the floor of the Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha, is binding on the ministers. That is why ministers, they tend to avoid the commitment or giving some assurance on the floor of the Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha, even though this doesn't have any kind of repercussion for the government. But yes, when such type of issues are discussed in the parliament, like it happened yesterday, this attracts a kind of embarrassment for the government, that the temple of the parliament, the temple of democracy, that is the parliament, is not being respected. When on the pious floor, when on the pious floor of the parliament, you are giving an assurance, then you are not living up to it. That means an insult to the institution of democracy, that is the parliament. So I told you about the about why the ministers are often seen interacting with the media and giving those type of assurances which they shy away from giving inside the house. Now, moving further, talking about online assurance monitoring system. Parliamentary Affairs Minister claimed that negligible assurances were pending due to online assurance monitoring system, because we are able to monitor now. He is saying that otherwise also the assurances were given and were not adhered to. But now, because we have an online assurances monitoring system which tells us a clear picture on the dashboard of a computer screen, that yes, these many pending assurances have not been given, have not been lived up to. So that is why we see 99% of the requests have been resolved, and 547 assurances are pending in Rajya Sabha, 764 assurances of 2024. Both these are of 2024. They are pending. Okay. So how can we utilize this clipping for the purpose of our examination? This is highly mains oriented. This can be used as an other way of evading the accountability of the government to the parliament. Okay, accountability in the sense that when ministers are supposed to answer the questions, they say that Speaker Mohodaya, we don't have the answer to this question, we will get back to the honorable member of parliament who is asking the question at a later date. But when the later date comes, the minister is not present, or minister says that he needs some more time. This is how the evading happens. Okay, we have talked about CAG. CAG reports are discussed in the parliament. Then we have talked about the grilling by the parliamentary standing committees. Every day for last 1 week, we have been talking about parliamentary standing committees, recommendations and suggestions, the highlighting of the lacunae in the programs like Manrega, in the program like Smart Cities Mission. Likewise, other reports are also discussed. So these are the ways of accountability, ensuring the accountability of the government to the parliament. One of them being the question hour, and other of them being the answerability, living up to the question hour, living up to the government assurances. So these are all methods of ensuring accountability, in which one additional point can be that of government assurances. So this is kind of a negative point that you can use in a manner that even though these tools are there, but these are not being used effectively, because many a time government assurances are given, but these government assurances are not backed with the concrete answer, as is visible through the pendency of the assurances. Now, what is OAMS? This is a preliminary specific thing. We can discuss it briefly. OAMS, launched in 2018, is a digital platform designed to track and monitor ministerial assurances. The system provides a kind of central repository for assurances, sends timely alerts, and allows the ministries to update progress. OAMS is jointly implemented by Ministry of Parliamentary Affairs with the secretariats of Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. So this question can be very easily framed into a question for preliminary examination. Okay, and the related thing is, what is the meaning of government assurances? Government assurances refer to the promises or undertakings given by the government ministries, only the ministers, okay, not by the members of the parliament on the floor of the house. Okay, these assurances typically arise during number one, question hour, number two, debates, when ministers respond to the questions posed by the members of the parliament, debates during the discussions on the bills, resolutions, or other matters. Now, if the minister states that he or she will take specific action or investigate a matter, for example, railway accident, etc., or how many Indians are trapped in Israel or Palestine, they have to get back in a time bound manner. When they do not get back, that tantamounts to government minister not living up to the assurance given to the house. So this is all. Now, last thing is Committee on Government Assurances. It's a joint committee. Committee investigates the extent to which a minister's pledges, assurances, and undertakings are carried out when he or she makes a promise or assurance on the floor of the house. Now, this committee has 15 Lok Sabha members and 10 Rajya Sabha members, out of which Speaker nominates 15 people. Okay, since 15 are from Lok Sabha, the Speaker nominates these people. Now, committee does not have a minister on board it. Okay, so this is the preliminary, highly preliminary oriented material. You just have to be aware about it. Now, coming to the other question here, you can quickly see this question. While answering the question in the comment section, please mark question number 1. This is question number 1 for the day. Moving further, an editorial, a very interesting editorial. I would like to sum it up rather than going slide by slide so as to help you save your time and my time. What is happening is, the program like universal basic health coverage, okay, is lacking in India. Basic health coverage, for which we require the strengthening of primary health centers. Primary health centers are the first point of interaction between the health system of the country and the citizens for basic things like fever, diagnosis, diabetes, checking, testing of diabetes, etc. When these first pedestal in the staircase of India's health system is missing, we are giving universal health insurance, publicly funded health insurance. Okay, that too riding on the back of whatever little private healthcare facilities we have in India. Since these private sector hospitals are being given money, insurance is being provided by the government, so private sector hospitals are earning a lot of money. These are profit oriented hospitals. You talk about Fortis, you talk about Max Hospital, you talk about so many private hospitals that you see around. But the problem here that is happening is the out of pocket expenditure from the pocket of the average Indian patient is around 70%. So why? Because the primary healthcare is lacking in India. Since primary healthcare is lacking in India, building upon the insurance model to provide the in hospital treatment, only when you get admitted to the hospital, then only you will get the insurance money paid out of the pocket of the government or private company which is providing the insurance to you. For whatever little ailments you have, majority of the ailments or medical illness is treated out of the pocket because it is not covered under insurance, right? So that is the problem with the way India is designing its health coverage. We are empowering the private sector hospitals, even as in the long run the burden of payment of the premium will increase as the level of awareness, the number of enrollments are happening in the Pradhan Mantri Ayushman Bharat program, insurance program. So as the number of insurance holders, number of patients who are having insurance will increase, government will have to pay a lot of money in thousands of crores of rupees to the private sector hospitals. Now, since the fact that we have very limited amount of money, limited percentage of GDP being spent on health, this will lead to further starvation of primary health centers. Now, the economic survey has been all pompous about, all vocal about the achievements under the Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana. But the problem is that we are frittering away a lot of precious government resources which could have been utilized for better management or better strengthening of primary health centers, then secondary and tertiary care, and then research and development. Not to talk about research and development, primary healthcare centers, 1,50,000 Ayushman Bharat centers were to be revamped under the scheme, under the National Health Policy 2017, which is what is lagging behind. Mere interiors or mere whitewashing the existing primary health centers without adequate number of health functionaries, without adequate number of hospitals and ventilators, is what is making the government sector led health institutions in India dependent on the private sector health institutions, healthcare institutions, private sector hospitals. This is what is depriving or further choking off the funds for the primary health centers, which are the first point of contact between the citizen and the healthcare system of the country. Screening of the basic diseases, if that could be taken care of, then patients need not aggravate the problem. Patients will, the simple cough, for example, will not aggravate into tuberculosis if diagnosed, if treated on time under the primary health center. Now, the problem with Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana, the writer says, is that it does not cover the out of pocket expenditure, even as the chronic healthcare expenditure is covered. As you can read here, catastrophic healthcare expenditure is taken care of under the publicly funded health insurance, that is Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana. But out of pocket expenditure on inpatient care is not taken care of. Okay, healthcare utilization is being analyzed through the payment of premium, the payment of treatment being availed by the citizens, by the beneficiaries. Okay, so rupees 1.25 lakh crore rupees worth of savings in out of pocket expenditure has been claimed by the economic survey. It says that, economic survey says that Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana has resulted in over 1.25 lakh crore rupees worth of savings for the people. But the reality is far from this. Findings below the surface are not as encouraging, particularly in the current context of budgetary allocation patterns. Now, let's understand it further. Persistent criticism of publicly funded health insurance in India has been that it does not cover the outpatient care. Okay, the medicines that a patient buys, or the screening or x-ray or any other kind of ultrasound that a patient has to undergo, is not covered. Outpatient care is not covered, which accounts for the largest share of out of pocket expenditure. Outpatient care is the largest share. As per the YV Reddy, as per the Reddy Commission, not YV Reddy, of 2012, 70% is the extent of out of pocket expenditure of an average Indian patient. Predictably, while schemes such as publicly funded health insurance, that is Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana, have reduced the financial burden when it comes to inpatient care. When a patient is admitted to hospital, then the burden is not much on the patient. But the concomitantly increased utilization of outpatient care ensures that the scheme has little impact on overall financial risk protection. So the government says that because of Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana, people are able to avail of better health facilities. People are able to reduce their financial risk. Let's understand it in the form of a flow chart. So what is the objective of this scheme, insurance scheme? To reduce the financial risk. But what are the components? What are the components of this financial risk? There are two components of this financial risk. Component number one is inpatient care. That means when somebody is suffering from chronic health care, chronic health disease, then he needs to be admitted to the hospital. When admitted to the hospital, that person will get the insurance cover under Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana. But the problem is that when the patient is discharged from the hospital and is not admitted to the hospital, that is out of, or you can say outpatient care. Okay, so this outpatient care involves out of pocket expenditure. This out of pocket expenditure is very high, and even after the arrival of, even after the launch of Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana, the consumption of outpatient care is rising and rising and rising. That means the component of financial risk that is not covered, when a patient is discharged from the hospital, his expenses are not covered. He will have to bear them out of pocket. So this component has been rising. and concomitantly this inpatient care treatment within the hospital cost, the cost is borne by the private insurance company, which is later on being compensated by the government. Okay, so government has only rupee 1 to allocate. Let's say if out of budget only 1 lakh crore rupees is to be allocated, if that 1 lakh crore is going predominantly to the private insurance companies or private hospitals for insuring people, then what is the advantage of having a scheme when outpatient care expenditure is also increasing? So this is where Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana has got a long way to go, the writer says. Another comparison that the writer has drawn is between the Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana, let's draw it here, Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana, which covers only inpatient care. That is when the patient is admitted to the hospital. Whereas if we compare it with the ESI, Employed State Insurance Scheme, or Central Government Health Scheme, where the government employees or their relatives or their wives are covered. Okay, this covers inpatient care as well as outpatient care. Both the components are covered. So this tells us that Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana has got a long way to go insofar as cushioning the people from the financial risk, overall financial risk is concerned. Merely accounting for the inpatient care expenditure does not cushion, does not relieve the people of the financial risk that might arise out of anybody in the family falling ill. Because out of pocket, the medicines that are not available in the national list of essential medicines, they are very, very costly. So these costly medicines are not covered. So that is the crux of this article. Article says that like in the employee state insurance hospitals, ESI hospitals or CGHS hospitals, the government Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana should also provide for both inpatient care and outpatient care, thereby covering the out of pocket expenditure also. Now let me add an element from my side. Obamacare kind of a program was there in the US when President was Barack Obama. So what he did was he made it a point that private sector companies, by providing the private sector insurance companies in US, they charge the US government a lot of money in to the extent of 1.3 trillion dollars was being paid every year to the private sector insurance companies. So he said that instead of giving so much of money to the private sector hospitals or insurance companies, why not strengthen the public sector, the American government's health service itself? So when a country like America, when a country like the US is thinking on those lines of strengthening the public sector healthcare, why in India are we following a pro private sector hospitals policy, pro private sector insurance kind of a scheme, where the money will be given more to the private sector companies at the cost of deprivation of the public sector healthcare infrastructure? So this is the crux of it. Okay, many a times a lot of editorials have come. Recently a PIL was filed in the Supreme Court, wherein the Supreme Court said that government should take care of the fact that the gullible people are not duped of their money when it comes to cheating in the private sector hospitals. Okay, now savings accrued from the private primary healthcare and social investments far outweigh those from the hospitalization insurance. So for example, if I'm a middle class person, my savings that I will be able to save because of the primary healthcare treatment, okay, will be much more than the money that I will be able to save because of the insurance that I have under Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana. Because this insurance money I will be able to utilize only when I am suffering from, or somebody in my family is suffering from chronic illness or needs the hospitalization. So my financial risk for hospitalization is even though protected, but my primary healthcare needs are not taken care of, and I have to spend much more on the primary healthcare provisioning out of my own pocket than getting admitted to the hospital. So this is the crux of this editorial. Moving further to the other news articles here. Coming to another important news article from the economy section, reduced imports of gold. We all know that gold prices have been hovering around 80,000 rupees per 10 grams. So many middle class families, they get weaned away from the gold. So gold imports come down, and thanks to the marriage season being over, Gold imports and silver imports have come down. Crude oil imports have also come down, thereby having a positive impact on India's trade deficit. Okay, gold and silver imports were at $2.7 billion in the last quarter of 2025, and this is lowest since June 2024. So India's trade deficit, the merchandise trade deficit, is at an all-time low of 42 months. Exports were around $36 billion, $37 billion. Imports were $50.9 billion, a 22-month low. Year on year, exports decreased by around 11%. So if you ask me, is this data required to be memorized? Answer is no. So what are we going to derive out of it for our exam purpose? Only the trend, gold, silver and crude oil, how can they contribute? For example, the statement could be, if the gold prices are rising, will the India's import bill increase or decrease? As per the consumer behavior, the behavioral economics, people tend to buy lesser amount of gold when the prices of gold have risen too steeply. Or another question could be, if the dollar is rising and rising, so what will be the impact on the prices of the gold? So gold prices will come down during such times. Or when the gold dollar prices are falling down, when the value of rupee is also depreciating, then gold prices increase. So these are the economic patterns in terms of financial market assets that have been observed. So just a derivation that when the rupee's value is depreciating and depreciating, so what will happen? Gold prices will increase because people need a safe haven, people need a safe asset to hedge into, to park their money into, that is gold in this case, right? Now, economic impact, the reduced fiscal deficit is expected to lead to a current account surplus. What will be the impact of current account surplus? An appreciation in the value of rupee. And it was observed yesterday also, when this data came, India's rupees value appreciated by 0.21 paisa yesterday. Why? Because the positive numbers, in the sense that India will have to pay lesser in terms of imports bill, import bill of country would be lower. So in that sense, people, the money, the outflow of the dollars, the outflow of the currency, Indian currency, would be lesser than in the past. Thereby the depreciating Indian currencies arrest would be there, in the sense that value would not decline further. So this is important in this context of falling Indian rupees value. Now coming to another thing, Yemen, recipe for failure. Before we begin this editorial, let me tell you, yesterday I did a holistic analysis of this entire episode, which is brewing up in the Red Sea area. Why? Houthi rebels, the entire video you can watch. Okay, now we will discuss in the context of this editorial the whole Sunni Shia Muslim dispute, how US is trying to harp on or gain advantage out of this Sunni Shia Muslim dispute by nailing Iran. Okay, so Iran has been blemished or blamed because of the selfish motives of the United States of America. Now, talking about the context of this editorial, Donald Trump came to power with the promise to shut down wars in Ukraine and West Asia, thereby the promise of bringing stability in the world order. Okay, the current turmoil that was going on since 2022, 2023. First, the Russia-Ukraine war, 2022 it started. Then talk about the Israel-Palestine war. The latest spell started in September 2023. So world, entire countries of the world, you talk about India, China, South Korea, Japan, everyone wants peace in this tumultuous region of the world, especially West Asia. Now, what is happening is Yemen is under the control of Houthi rebels. These Houthi rebels have been gaining ground since last 7 years, the article says, and they have gained the control of port of Hodeidah, which is an important port of Yemen. This area is entirely in the grip of Houthi rebels, and this is the Strait of Bab al Mandeb, this strait which leads us to Red Sea and then leads us onwards to the seaport, that is Suez Canal. Okay, a narrow passage of the for the ships. Now what Houthi rebels are doing is they are damaging all the cargo ships that are going from this area. They are destroying, they are attacking the ships, especially the ones of allies of the United States, Israel included, European Union countries, Europe included. So whatever cargo passes from the Asian region towards the European region through the Suez Canal route is being targeted by the Houthi rebels. Why Houthi rebels are advocating for Hamas? because they are all connected through a common thread called as the axis of resistance. Iran is a Shia Muslim country. Okay, so Saudi Arabia is a Sunni Muslim country. US has been siding with Saudi Arabia because Saudi Arabia is the largest country and it controls Gulf Cooperation Council, which controls all the oil producing countries also. OPEC also is in the control of Saudi Arabia. So US sided with Saudi Arabia and promoted the hatred between Iran and Saudi Arabia for its own selfish motives. Motive here is to secure the crude oil assets of these oil rich Gulf countries. Now, in that spirit, what is happening is Iran, in a way, liaisoned with all these separatist elements of Palestine, or you talk about Iraq, Kataib, Hezbollah, all those countries which have been the victims of US tyranny, US war at one point of time or the other, they have been combined into one force by Iran. They are the rogue elements. You talk about Houthi rebels of Yemen. They want a separate Shiite country or Shia country. Iran is also a Shia country. So Shia support angle is there, because of which now Houthi rebels, they are standing for the cause of Hamas in Gaza Strip. When Hamas is under utmost pressure from Israel because of the blockade imposed by Israel on all the humanitarian assistance or relief or aid material that is going towards the people of Gaza through this Suez Canal has been blockaded by Israel completely. Because Israel says that under the rubric of, under the excuse or garb of humanitarian aid, food and relief material, Gaza Strip, Hamas is going to get arms and ammunitions from the countries sympathizing for people of Gaza, sympathizing for Hamas. So Hamas would be able to revitalize its fledgling fight. Already Hamas has been bleeded. It has been wounded heavily. Now US does not want to lose that phase where Hamas is on the way, on the path to surrender, because they do not have arms and ammunition, the stock of weapons, etc. To replenish their stock, Yemen Houthi rebels are standing with the Hamas group and putting pressure on all the cargo ships, by bombarding them, by launching drone attacks, or by launching the missiles attack on the ships, including that of the US, which is the security provider for this region. US aircraft carrier Henry Truman Harry Truman was deployed there so as to instill a sense of security in the minds of all the trading partners of the United States of America, that rest assured, even though the war is going on, even though the situation in the Red Sea is tense, but still United States will be able to secure the freedom of navigation for all the trading partners of the United States, including the United States itself, including the European countries. But the attack by the Houthi rebels on the United States aircraft carrier itself has now put immense pressure on the United States, so much so that United States is now threatening the Houthi rebels of Yemen to back out from supporting Hamas, else their areas will be bombarded, their areas will be droned with the US drones, and their allies or their functionaries, their cadre people, they would be killed. So this is what is going on right now. There are calls for diplomatic engagement, all that nice language has been used in this editorial, but I have told you the crux. For more information, you can watch that video that has been uploaded on this channel itself, as I have been doing the analysis of various such issues. So this will give you, these type of videos that I uploaded yesterday will give you a complete view of what is happening in the world, in various parts of the world, insofar as international happenings, international incidents are concerned. This was all in today's news analysis. Let me know your thoughts if you want something else to be added. We have been adding prelims oriented questions also. We have been doing the analysis of one or two editorials on a daily basis. So this was all. It was a pleasure teaching you. Thank you guys. Have a good day.